You know, that skull insignia. I mean, it's one of the most recognizable and, let's be honest, controversial symbols in all of pop culture. It belongs, of course, to the Punisher, Marvel's #1 anti-hero, famous for his one-man war on crime. But behind the giant arsenal and the staggering body count, there's a character who is way more complex than you'd think. So today, we're going to break down the anatomy of this anti-hero, piece by piece. So, who is the man behind that skull? Is he some kind of tragic hero? Is he a monster? Or is he something else entirely? To get to the bottom of it, we're going to dive into some of his most defining stories, pulling apart the key moments that really show us who this iconic character is. All right, let's start at the beginning. Well, actually, it's more like two beginnings. See, everyone thinks they know the story of how Frank Castle's family died, but the truth of how the Punisher was born is this fascinating debate that's really defined by two completely different comic book arcs. Okay, so you've got these two totally different ideas about how he was created. On the one hand, there's Punisher Year One. This is the classic story, right? It's an external trigger, his family is murdered, the system lets him down, and that trauma pushes him over the edge. But then you have Born. And Born suggests something much, much darker. That the war in Vietnam awakened a violent part of him that was already there, just waiting for an excuse to get out. And this line from Born just reframes his entire origin. Think about what that means. The murder of his family wasn't the event that created the Punisher. It was just the event that finally unleashed him. The key was already in the lock, and that horrible tragedy just turned it. So if he's this force of nature, does he even have a moral code? It's so easy to just see him as a mindless killing machine. But you know what's interesting? When you put him up against other heroes, or even other soldiers, you start to see the lines he actually draws, and the ones he absolutely refuses to cross. The classic child play storyline puts this conflict right up front. On one side, you've got Daredevil, a man who believes in the law and the sanctity of life. And on the other, you have Frank, who sees the law as a total failure and execution as the only real solution. Their clash isn't just punches and kicks, it's a battle of philosophies. It actually pushes Daredevil so far that he has to shoot Frank just to stop him from killing a criminal. Wild stuff. The Slavers takes this to a whole other level. It forces Frank to confront an evil so real and so pervasive that it is genuinely chilling to read. And what makes this story so powerful is its sobering, almost anti-comic book message. It looks at the global horror of human trafficking and basically concludes that even the Punisher's absolute, brutal methods are just a drop in the ocean. It's a terrifying admission that some evils are just too big for one man to stop, no matter how ruthless he is. But where do his loyalties really lie? In Valley Forge, Frank isn't being hunted by mobsters. He's hunted by corrupt U.S. military generals and the soldiers under their command. And all of a sudden, that black and white world he lives in, it gets real gray real fast. His hesitation to kill these soldiers, men he sees as brothers who are just following orders, reveals a core truth. Before he was the Punisher, he was a soldier, and that part of him is still in there. You know, it's really easy to just write Frank off as a blunt instrument, right? A guy with a gun and a whole lot of rage. But that overlooks one of his most dangerous weapons, his mind. We're not just talking about battlefield tactics here. His war journals detail these incredibly meticulous plans, psychological profiles of his targets, backup plans for his backup plans. Some of his greatest stories reveal a cold, calculating genius at work. Just look at the Cell. This is not a simple rampage. Oh no, this is a masterpiece of vengeance. Frank gets himself thrown into Rikers Island on purpose, just to get to the mob bosses who are personally responsible for his family's death. And from the inside, he engineers a full-blown prison riot. But it's not chaos for chaos's sake. He uses the mayhem as a surgical tool to isolate and execute his targets one by one. That isn't rage, that's strategy. It's terrifyingly brilliant. So we've seen the two origins, the complicated moral code, the tactical genius. But listen, no look at the Punisher would be complete without talking about the story that took all of those things and packaged them perfectly for a new generation. The legendary Welcome Back, Frank. I mean, this storyline is just wall-to-wall iconic moments. You have Frank systematically taking down an entire crime family. You have that unforgettable, brutal fight with this seemingly unstoppable villain called the Russian. And yes, you have that infamous moment where he literally punches a polar bear in the face. It's the perfect mix of dark humor and completely over-the-top action, and it totally cemented the Punisher as an A-list character. So when we pull all these pieces together, what do we actually see? We see an origin that's born from both a horrible external tragedy and a deep internal darkness. We see a man with a brutal but weirdly consistent moral code, and we see a brilliant tactician hiding underneath all that pure rage. This isn't just a guy with a gun. It's a complex, contradictory, and uncompromising force of nature. Which, of course, leaves us with the ultimate question. Is Frank Castle a villain, a monster created by his own demons, or is he a necessary evil? A dark reflection of a world where justice fails so many, so often. The answer, just like the character himself, is anything but simple.